The humans stepped off their ship onto the alien world with calm determination, despite the towering mountains and swirling storms that surrounded them. The air smelled strange to their senses, but they breathed it anyway without hesitation. Their eyes scanned the horizon, noting the jagged rocks and glowing plants that swayed as if alive. The aliens watched from above their spires and ships, laughing at the frail creatures who walked without weapons too simple to be taken seriously. Yet the 2B humans did not flinch. They carried only tools that looked ordinary and simple, but in their hands every item seemed to have a purpose. The leader of the human group was tall, with a strong posture and eyes that shone with quiet intelligence. He surveyed the terrain, noting the movement of alien scouts in the distance. Their strange forms moved with precision, but the humans paid no attention. Instead, they began setting small markers in the ground, arranging stones in patterns that seemed meaningless to the aliens, but carried meaning to the humans. It was a way to observe the environment and plan their next move without revealing their intentions. The aliens whispered among themselves, puzzled by the calm and methodical behavior of humans who appeared weak and unarmed. They could not see the spark of ingenuity that glimmered in every gesture of the humans. As the humans moved forward, they examined the plants, noting which could provide food or medicine, and which could be used for other purposes. They tested the soil and water, understanding the world in ways the aliens had never considered. Every rock, every branch, every puddle of strange glowing liquid became part of their observation. The aliens watched, expecting fear or hesitation, but found none. The humans laughed quietly among themselves at minor mishaps like slipping on wet moss or tripping over roots, but these incidents only made them more determined. Their voices were calm, but full of purpose, and even when the winds howled and the ground shook, they continued their exploration with careful attention to every detail. The aliens grew uneasy, noticing that every action the humans took seemed to prepare them for something greater, something the aliens could not predict. In the center of the valley, the humans paused to examine a stream of bright liquid flowing between jagged rocks. They knelt and used simple instruments to test its properties, taking notes and adjusting their tools. Their communication was soft but precise, sharing ideas in ways that seemed almost invisible to the aliens who could only watch and guess at their meaning. The humans were not afraid of the alien presence. They seemed almost to welcome it, treating the entire world as a playground and a laboratory and a battlefield all at once. The alien commanders signaled their shock troops to advance, expecting to intimidate the humans, but the humans did not flinch. They adjusted their simple gear, setting up small mechanisms, and marking locations that would later serve purposes only they understood. It was a quiet preparation that carried the weight of inevitability, and the aliens could feel it, though they did not understand it fully. As the sun dipped behind the jagged mountains, the humans gathered near the edge of a cliff overlooking a valley where alien patrols moved. The wind whipped around them, but they stood steady, analyzing the terrain, calculating angles and distances, and the potential of every object. Around them, a fallen tree became a bridge. A pile of stones became cover. A stick became a lever. Their eyes shone with determination and subtle amusement at the underestimation of their enemies. The aliens looked on, realizing too late that these fragile beings were not fragile at all. Their presence alone was a warning and a puzzle, a force that could not be measured by strength or size alone. The humans continued their work as night fell, marking the beginning of a campaign that no alien mind could anticipate or predict. They moved with calm authority and quiet focus, and the world around them became a stage for their ingenuity and their unyielding will to survive and dominate. The following day, the aliens launched their first real attack, believing the humans were too weak to resist. Their plan was simple: overwhelm the small human group with their superior numbers and advanced technology. They descended from the high ground with their sleek armored vehicles and heavy weapons, expecting the humans to scatter or surrender in fear. But the humans stood firm in the clearing, their expressions unchanged as the alien force closed in. The humans had already anticipated this move, and they had been preparing. The aliens had expected the humans to be disorganized, unprepared. But what they did not see was the calm and calculated nature of human strategy. They had used the previous day's observations to turn the environment into a deadly advantage. The aliens were confused at first. Their attack was slow and methodical, but the humans seemed to be waiting for them to make the first move. And when they did, the humans moved with precision. A single human in the front raised a simple metal rod and swung it with a practiced motion, the rod striking the ground in a specific pattern that the aliens didn't recognize, but the ground beneath them seemed to shift and crack in response. The aliens hesitated as the earth seemed to break apart, with incredible speed and force. Beneath their feet, hidden traps sprang to life, the soil erupted and metal spikes shot from the ground, piercing the alien vehicles and soldiers alike. The aliens screamed in shock and pain, but the humans were already moving again. Their tools that had seemed insignificant before now became deadly as the humans worked in sync. They used simple ropes to pull down large rocks from the cliffs above, causing them to tumble down onto the alien formations, crushing their machines and sending alien soldiers scattering in all directions. It wasn't chaos to the humans, it was controlled destruction. One of the humans tossed a small device into the air, and it released a high-pitched sound. The aliens did not understand, but the humans clearly did. The sound was a signal for the others who had set up small traps earlier in the day. The aliens were walking into a deadly maze. Every movement they made was predicted. Every step taken by the humans had a purpose. The sound from the device triggered the next phase of the human plan. A series of perfectly timed explosions echoed across the valley. They were not large explosive devices by the standards of the alien military, but they were perfectly placed and devastatingly effective. Alien soldiers, who had thought they were safe from the initial attack, found themselves caught in sudden blasts of fire and smoke that filled the air. With their advanced technology, they had no way of understanding how the humans had set this up, and by the time they started to reorganize, it was too late. The humans had already moved on. The humans didn't rely on high-tech weapons or heavy artillery. They used the land around them, the tools they had carried with them, and the minds that guided their every action. The aliens tried to adapt, but they couldn't keep up. They attempted to call for reinforcements but found their communication systems blocked by human-made jammers hidden among the rocks and trees. The humans used their simple radios to coordinate movements, silently passing messages through their ranks like a web of connections invisible to the alien eyes, but clear to the humans who moved like a single organism. Their precision and unpredictability caught the aliens off guard, again and again. The battlefield became a nightmare for the invaders. Every attempt to advance was met with traps or attacks that they couldn't explain. The humans didn't need advanced technology to be deadly. They had something much more dangerous. They had ingenuity. The battle lasted for hours, but to the humans it felt like a choreographed dance. Their movements were synchronized, each one of them knowing their role without question, as if they had practiced this for years. But in reality, it was only their ability to adapt to the situation that allowed them to succeed. They had become a force that could not be predicted because every time the aliens thought they understood the humans' strategy, it changed and shifted like the wind. They worked with what they had and made the most out of every resource at their disposal. The aliens began to panic, realizing they were out of their depth and unable to match the humans' unyielding determination. Every alien that was captured or killed was a reminder that the humans' greatest weapon was not their size or strength, but their minds and their ability to turn everything into a weapon. As the sun began to set, the battlefield was littered with the remains of alien vehicles and the bodies of soldiers who had underestimated the humans. They lay scattered across the landscape, caught in the traps the humans had set so carefully and with such precision. The humans gathered together once more, without celebration or triumph, simply moving forward to the next phase of their plan. Their expression remained the same, as if they had always known the outcome. As they disappeared into the night, the aliens realized with growing dread that the humans had already won. This battle was just the beginning. The aliens were reeling from the shock of their defeat, but they refused to admit it. Their pride would not allow them to accept that a species so small, so seemingly insignificant, could outsmart them with their wounded soldiers and destroyed technology. They regrouped at their command center and began planning their next attack. They called in reinforcements from the far reaches of their empire, confident that no matter how resourceful the humans were, they could not hold off a full-scale invasion. But what the aliens did not know was that every move they made, every decision they took was already part of the human plan. The humans had been preparing for this moment the entire time. They knew the aliens would not give up easily, and they knew that each victory they gained would only fuel the enemy's determination to crush them. As the reinforcements arrived in large ships that filled the sky, the humans moved quietly through the forests, their eyes never leaving the sky, watching the ships descend with growing anticipation. The humans had never planned to face the aliens head-on. Instead, they had set the stage for something far more devastating, something the aliens would never see coming. They had observed the alien ships with great care, noting their designs and their weaknesses. They had studied the movement patterns of the alien soldiers and the response times of their machines, and the humans knew that if they could set the right traps at the right moments, they could turn the tide completely. The next phase of the humans' plan was set into motion under the cover of night. The humans had carefully marked the alien ships' landing zones, with signals so subtle that the aliens could not detect them. Each signal was a beacon for something far more dangerous, hidden deep within the ground. The humans had used their knowledge of the land to prepare mines, traps, and hidden explosives that lay beneath the soil, waiting for the right moment to spring into action. The alien soldiers marched into position, unaware of the deadly devices that lay just beneath their feet. The ships landed in the designated zones, and the alien forces began to unload their troops and supplies. But the humans were already one step ahead. At the precise moment when the alien soldiers began to move toward their landing sites, the ground beneath them exploded with violent force. The first blast was so sudden and so powerful that it shook the ground beneath the alien forces, sending shockwaves through the ranks. The explosions ripped through the air and sent soldiers flying in every direction. The aliens scrambled to regroup, but it was too late. The humans had anticipated this moment perfectly, and their traps did not stop at explosions. They had set up false signals to mislead the aliens into walking straight into their carefully planned ambush points. The second wave of explosions came even faster and harder than the first, as the aliens found themselves surrounded by traps they had never seen and could not understand. In the chaos that followed, the humans emerged from their hiding spots, moving with precision and confidence. The alien forces, who had once been so certain of their superiority, now found themselves on the defensive. The humans used their tools in ways the aliens could not predict. A simple rope was used to create traps that pulled soldiers into pits lined with sharp rocks. A bundle of sticks became a deadly spear that impaled an alien commander who had been leading the charge. The humans fought with a calm determination and an unshakable confidence that left the aliens struggling to understand what was happening. They had never encountered an enemy who fought this way, and now they were paying the price. As the hours passed, the battlefield began to shift. The humans moved like shadows, their movements calculated and deliberate. They used the environment to their advantage, turning trees, rocks, and streams into deadly obstacles for the aliens. Each alien advance was met with human resistance that seemed to come from every direction. The aliens tried to call in air support but found their communication systems jammed by devices the humans had set up earlier. It was as if the humans had anticipated every move the aliens would make and had already planned their responses. By the time the reinforcements had fully landed and attempted to regroup, they were too scattered and disorganized to mount a proper counterattack. The humans had already planted false signals and traps that caused the aliens to walk straight into their own destruction. The once powerful alien army had been reduced to a disoriented group of survivors trying to flee from an enemy they could not comprehend. The humans had proven once again that their greatest strength was not in numbers or technology, but in their ability to adapt and use everything around them to create a weapon. The battle did not end with a single victory for the humans. Instead, it was a slow and relentless defeat for the aliens. As they were picked off one by one, their forces divided and defeated by the human ingenuity they had underestimated so severely. The humans did not chase the aliens down, they simply allowed them to scatter into the wilderness, knowing that the next phase of their plan was already set in motion. The aliens had underestimated humanity's ability to turn everything into a weapon. and in doing so they had lost the war before it had even truly begun. The battlefield was eerily quiet after the chaos of the last battle. The humans had turned the tide once again without resorting to conventional tactics. They simply used what they had available and turned it into something deadly. Now the aliens were regrouping far from the front lines, trying to understand how they had been so easily outwitted and outmaneuvered. They had brought in their heaviest forces, expecting to crush the humans once and for all, but every time they thought they had a handle on the situation, the humans adapted and struck back harder than before. The aliens couldn't grasp the full extent of human ingenuity. Every time they thought they understood the enemy's strategy, it shifted and changed in ways that confused and terrorized them. In the quiet that followed, the humans worked silently, preparing for the next phase of the conflict. They were not interested in celebration or recognition. All they cared about was continuing their mission. Their leader surveyed the horizon, looking over the scattered remains of the alien forces. He knew the enemy would not give up easily, but he also knew the humans had an advantage the aliens could not replicate. The humans had been born in a brutal environment, a death world where survival depended on wit and adaptability. They had honed their skills for generations, and now they were using every tool at their disposal to make their enemies pay for underestimating them. The humans moved like shadows across the landscape, careful and methodical. They knew the alien commanders would not be foolish enough to make the same mistake twice, but the humans were prepared for that as well. With their enemies retreating, the humans began to set up their next traps, not waiting for the aliens to regroup, but rather making sure that when they did, they would walk into another deadly surprise. The humans used the time to study the terrain once more, recalculating their strategy and refining their plans. They did not rush their work. They knew that the aliens were coming for them, and when the next attack came, it would be bigger and more coordinated than before. They had learned from the previous battle that the aliens would bring more weapons and more soldiers, but the humans had something the aliens did not have. They had the land and the knowledge to turn everything in their environment into a weapon. When the aliens made their move again, it was with a force far greater than any they had brought before. Their ships filled the sky, blocking out the sun, and their soldiers marched in formation as if they had learned from their past mistakes. The aliens expected the humans to be cornered or outmatched, but the humans had been preparing for this moment with unshakable patience. They had studied the alien forces, watching their movements and anticipating every possible attack. The humans had set their final traps in the hills and valleys near their camp, turning the land itself into a deadly maze for the alien forces to navigate. They had planted explosive charges beneath the ground and set up false trails to mislead the alien commanders into following the wrong paths. The first wave of aliens landed with a roar, their ships shaking the earth as they touched down, but as soon as their feet hit the ground, the humans sprang into action. Using simple hand signals, the humans coordinated their movements, as they had done so many times before. They moved swiftly and silently, setting off the first wave of explosions, just as the aliens began to advance. The ground rumbled and erupted beneath the aliens, sending them scattering in all directions. The humans did not wait for the aliens to regroup. Instead, they used the explosions as cover to move in close and strike at the alien soldiers, who were now confused and disoriented. The humans used their simple weapons to devastating effect, turning every piece of the environment into a tool for destruction. As the aliens tried to form new lines and regain control, the humans attacked from all sides. They used their knowledge of the land to create ambush points where the aliens were forced to fight on the humans' terms. The humans didn't need to meet the aliens in open combat. They just kept pushing them into the corners of the landscape until the aliens had nowhere to go. The alien commanders, who had once been so sure of their superiority, began to realize that they were not fighting an inferior species. They were fighting an enemy that knew how to use everything around them and turn it into a weapon. The humans were relentless, their movements were precise, and their attacks were swift. Each time an alien force tried to regroup, the humans struck back harder, forcing them into retreat. By the end of the day, the alien forces were in disarray, scattered and broken by the human ingenuity they had underestimated so terribly. The humans had not only survived, they had become a force that could not be ignored. Their enemy was broken and on the run, and for the first time the aliens began to understand the true meaning of fear. They had thought the humans weak, fragile, and unprepared, but the humans had proven that their true strength lay not in their size or their technology, but in their ability to adapt to any situation and turn it to their advantage. The aliens had learned too late that when it came to humanity, everything was a weapon. The humans had seen the aliens falter, but they knew the battle was far from over. The aliens had regrouped their forces and were planning their next move. It had become clear to the humans that the aliens would no longer underestimate them, but this only made the humans more dangerous. Now that the aliens were aware of human ingenuity, they would fight with all their might. But the humans had anticipated this. They knew the aliens would come for them with everything they had, and this was exactly what the humans wanted. The humans had spent the time after the last battle carefully preparing for the next wave of alien forces. The land around them had been transformed into a deadly maze of traps and explosives. Every inch had been studied and prepared for the coming assault. The humans worked silently under the cover of night, setting up their defenses and ensuring that every trap was in place. They didn't need advanced technology. To succeed, they only needed their ability to turn the simplest things into tools of destruction. The aliens would be walking into a nightmare that they couldn't possibly predict. When the aliens finally arrived, their forces were overwhelming. The ships filled the sky as they descended in perfect formation. Their soldiers were well trained and their weapons were state-of-the-art, but none of this mattered. The humans had already set their plan into motion. The first wave of alien soldiers stepped onto the ground with a confident stride, their armored boots crunching against the earth. But as soon as their feet touched the soil, the ground beneath them shifted. The humans had used their knowledge of the terrain to plant explosive charges that lay dormant until the exact moment of impact. The ground erupted, sending alien soldiers flying in every direction. The aliens had never seen anything like it before. They had expected resistance, but they had never expected to be attacked by the very ground they stood on. The humans did not wait for the aliens to recover. They moved swiftly, using the confusion caused by the explosions to get close to the disoriented alien soldiers. Without hesitation, the humans struck with precision, targeting the weak points in the alien armor and using their simple weapons to deadly effect. They used ropes to pull down massive rocks from the surrounding cliffs, creating barriers that blocked the alien advance. The humans had created a perfect killing ground where every move was calculated and every action had a purpose. The alien soldiers tried to regroup, but they were met with more explosions and more traps that forced them into retreat as the alien forces tried to escape. The humans followed close behind, using their environment to trap the fleeing soldiers. The humans knew the terrain better than the aliens ever could, and they used this to their advantage, setting up false trails and confusing the enemy with misleading signals. They drove the aliens deeper into the forest where the traps were even more deadly. Alien soldiers who thought they had found safety found themselves caught in hidden pits or crushed by falling trees and rocks. The aliens had been lured into a web they couldn't escape, and the humans were tightening the noose. With each passing hour, the alien forces began to break down. They had not prepared for an enemy that could think in such unpredictable ways. Their advanced technology and firepower were useless in the face of such creativity and adaptability. The humans fought with an intensity that the aliens had never seen before. They didn't fight for land or resources. They fought for survival. They fought to prove that no matter how many times the aliens underestimated them, they would keep coming back stronger and smarter than ever. As the battle raged on, the humans continued to turn the tide slowly but steadily. Every attack they launched was met with an alien counterattack, but every time the aliens tried to regain control, they were outmaneuvered. Once more, the humans used their environment, their resources, and their ability to improvise to create opportunities where there were none. They knew the aliens would never give up, but they also knew that as long as they stayed one step ahead, they would eventually win. It was not a question of how strong the aliens were. It was a question of who could adapt the fastest, and the humans had shown time and time again that they were the masters of adaptation. The alien forces were now disorganized and demoralized. They had been caught in traps they couldn't understand and overwhelmed by a foe they couldn't predict. Their once impressive technology had been turned against them, and their numbers had dwindled rapidly as they tried to flee into the wilderness. But the humans did not give chase. Instead, they allowed the aliens to scatter, knowing that their victory was already assured. The aliens had learned that when faced with humanity's ingenuity, no matter how many reinforcements they brought, no matter how advanced their technology was, they would never be able to defeat a force that could turn anything into a weapon. The aliens had retreated once, again, but this time their defeat had shaken them to their core. They were no longer confident in their superiority, and their commanders were beginning to question the strategy that had led them into battle. The humans had outwitted them at every turn, and now they were at the mercy of a force they could not understand and could not control. The aliens were used to crushing lesser species with brute force and overwhelming firepower, but this was not a battle they could win through sheer strength. They were facing an enemy who used their minds more than their muscles, and every attempt to strike back was met with an even more devastating counterattack. The humans had proven that their greatest strength lay not in their size or advanced technology, but in their ability to adapt and outthink their enemies. The human forces had spent the days after their last victory, recovering and preparing for the final confrontation. They knew the aliens would come for them one last time. They could feel the tension in the air as the enemy regrouped and planned their next move. The humans did not fear this final attack, they welcomed it, knowing that they had already won. It was no longer a question of if they could defeat the aliens, but when the aliens launched their final offensive with everything they had. They descended from the skies with a force so overwhelming it seemed impossible to overcome. But the humans were ready. Their weapons were simple, yet effective, and their traps were set with deadly precision. As the alien forces landed on the planet's surface, they were immediately met with explosions that ripped through the air, sending shockwaves that rattled their ships and shook the ground beneath them. The humans had placed explosive devices in strategic locations, waiting for the exact moment when the alien forces would arrive. They had studied the alien ships and movements so closely that they could predict their every move. The aliens tried to fight back with their advanced weaponry, but the humans were already moving. Their strikes were quick and deadly as they used the environment to their advantage once again. In the midst of the chaos, the human leader gave a signal, and the humans quickly surrounded, the alien forces trapping them in a circle of destruction. The aliens tried to fight their way out, but every time they moved, they were met with another trap or ambush that forced them back. Their weapons couldn't match the humans' adaptability, and their technology was no match for the resourcefulness of the human mind. The aliens' advanced armor was no match for the traps that had been set with precision. Every time an alien attempted to escape, they were caught in another deadly snare. The humans had mastered the art of warfare not through strength or numbers, but through ingenuity and strategy. The aliens' leaders watched in horror as their forces were systematically dismantled. They had tried to overwhelm the humans with numbers, but had failed. They had tried to outgun them, but had failed. They had underestimated the human spirit and the human mind, and now they were paying the price. The alien commanders ordered a full retreat, but it was too late. The humans had already anticipated their every move and had set up the perfect trap as the final wave of aliens attempted to escape. They found themselves trapped in a final ambush. The humans had predicted their every move and had set up a final trap in the heart of the alien stronghold. The aliens had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. They were surrounded and outnumbered by a force that had once been considered weak, but had now become unstoppable. The humans moved in with calm determination, their weapons efficient and precise. They didn't need to fight with brute force. They didn't need advanced weapons or technology. They only needed the will to survive and the ability to adapt to any situation. The final battle was swift and brutal, but the outcome was inevitable. The aliens had underestimated humanity one last time, and now they would pay the ultimate price. By the end of the day, the alien forces had been completely defeated. The humans had not only won the battle, they had won the war. They had proven that their greatest strength was not their weapons or their technology, but their ability to use everything around them to survive and dominate. The alien empires that had once believed they were the rulers of the galaxy now lay broken and scattered in the wake of humanity's ingenuity and resourcefulness. The humans did not celebrate their victory. They simply continued on with their mission, knowing that their work was not yet done. But as they looked upon the wreckage of the alien forces, they knew that they had achieved something that no one had ever thought possible. They had shown the galaxy that humanity could not be crushed by force or technology. They had shown the galaxy that, when it came to survival and domination, everything was a weapon. The last remnants of the alien forces scattered into the wilderness of the planet with no direction and no hope left. The humans did not chase them down. The battle was over, and the aliens had been utterly defeated. The humans stood together in the midst of the desolation, surveying the landscape that had once been the battlefield. The planet was quiet now, no longer echoing with the sounds of war and destruction. The aliens had underestimated humanity at every turn, and now they were paying the price. Their once powerful empire was shattered, broken apart by a species they had thought too weak to be a threat. The humans knew that the galaxy would never forget this victory. The alien empires would never forget the day they learned that humanity was not something to be laughed at or underestimated. The humans had proven that their greatest strength did not lie in their numbers or in the advanced technology they possessed. It lay in their ability to adapt to any environment, to use everything around them and turn it into a weapon. They had taken a world that had been hostile to them, turned it to their advantage, and defeated the most powerful forces in the galaxy, with nothing more than their ingenuity and will to survive. As the dust settled and the fires burned out, the humans began to rebuild. They did not celebrate. They did not need to. Their victory was not in the destruction of their enemies, but in the knowledge that they had proven their worth to the universe. To the alien forces that had once believed humanity to be weak and fragile, this was a reminder that they were wrong. Humans were survivors. They were fighters. They were a force that could not be ignored. The leaders of the human forces met in a quiet room far from the front lines. They discussed the future and what it meant for humanity now that they had emerged victorious. The aliens had been broken and their empires shattered, but the humans knew that this was not the end. It was only the beginning. Humanity had made its mark on the galaxy, and now the universe would see that nothing could stand in their way. The human leaders looked at each other, knowing that their victory was not a fluke. It was the result of years of preparation, of studying their enemies and understanding their weaknesses. Humanity had shown that they could fight in ways the aliens could never have predicted. They had used simple tools and the land itself to turn the tide of battle to their favor. The aliens had been outwitted, outsmarted, and outmaneuvered by the one thing they had never accounted for: the human mind. But even as the humans celebrated their hard-won victory, they knew that the universe was vast and full of unknown threats. The alien empires were not the only power in the galaxy. There were others who might one day come to challenge humanity. But the humans were not afraid. They had proven themselves capable of handling any challenge that came their way. As the final battles ended and the remaining alien ships fled into space, the humans looked out at the stars, knowing that they had earned their place in the galaxy. The universe was no longer a place of uncertainty. For them, it was a place of opportunity. It was a place where humanity could thrive and grow stronger with each passing day. The alien empires would never forget the day they had underestimated humanity. They would never forget the day that everything they thought they knew about strength and power was shattered by a species that had been written off as insignificant. The humans had shown the galaxy that they were not to be taken lightly, that their ingenuity, creativity, and resilience made them a force to be reckoned with. As the humans looked to the future, they knew that their story was just beginning. They had proven that no matter how many times the universe tried to break them, they would always rise up stronger. They would not be the last ones standing, but they would be the ones who shaped the future. They would be the ones who determined their destiny. The universe would come to fear humanity, not because of their weapons, but because they had learned the greatest lesson of all: to humans, everything was a weapon. The humans stood silent as the last echoes of battle faded into the stillness of the ruined landscape they had conquered. The alien forces lay scattered and broken. Their ships burned in the distance, their technology rendered useless against the human ingenuity that had outsmarted them at every turn. The galaxy would never forget. the day the humans rose to power and claimed their rightful place among the stars. What had started as a fight for survival had turned into a defining moment in history, a moment when humanity had shown that it could not be defeated, that no matter the odds they could turn any situation into an opportunity and use it to their advantage. The alien empires had been shattered, the war had been won, but humanity had learned that this victory was only the beginning. They had proven that everything was a weapon, and now they would use that knowledge to shape the future. The alien forces who had once laughed at humans for their simplicity and perceived weakness now lay defeated and broken, their leaders cowering in fear of a species they had so thoroughly underestimated. The humans had proven that strength was not in numbers or advanced technology. It was in adaptability. It was in the ability to use anything to survive, to thrive. Even in the most hostile environments, the humans had used the land, the sky, the tools at their disposal, and even their very minds to overcome an enemy that thought they were invincibles. The humans walked away from the wreckage. They knew their future was now theirs to command the galaxy. That had once seemed vast and full of threats was now a place of opportunity. They had taken their first steps into a universe that would no longer view them as weak or insignificant. They had proven that humanity could stand shoulder to shoulder with the greatest empires of the galaxy and carve out their own place in it. No longer would they be dismissed or ignored. Humanity was no longer just a species struggling to survive. They were a force to be reckoned with, a force that could not be outwitted or overpowered no matter the enemy. The humans did not seek revenge for the suffering the alien forces had caused. They did not seek to rule the galaxy with an iron fist. They had only one goal: to ensure their survival, to ensure that the lessons they had learned would not be forgotten. They had fought not just for victory, but for the very right to exist in a universe that had once viewed them as expendable. They had fought for the future of their children. And their children's children. They had fought because they knew that their species was worth preserving. Their potential was limitless, and they would not let anyone take that from them. As the final remnants of the alien forces fled into the depths of space, the humans remained vigilant. They knew the galaxy was vast and full of dangers, and that they were not the only players on the field. But they also knew that they had something the rest of the universe could not match: the ability to adapt, to use everything at their disposal, to turn any situation into an opportunity to rise from the ashes and fight for their survival. They were no longer the underdogs. They were no longer the prey. They had become the predators of the galaxy, and they would never let their enemies forget it. The humans stood tall as the stars glimmered above them, their eyes filled with the promise of a future they would create, a future where humanity would not only survive but thrive, a future where they would shape the destiny of the galaxy itself. They had shown the universe that no matter how powerful or advanced an enemy might be, there was one thing that could not be defeated: human ingenuity. The end.